The morning sun filtered softly through the kitchen blinds as Emily stood at the sink, gripping her coffee mug tighter than necessary. Outside, the quiet Connecticut suburb buzzed with the ordinary hum of lawnmowers and dog walkers. Inside, Emily moved through her routine like a ghost, dutifully, instinctively, but hollowed. The calendar on the fridge had one circled date left untouched, her father's upcoming 70th birthday. She'd been the one who cared to remember milestones, to plan carefully, even when no one asked her to. Her siblings hadn't checked in for weeks. Still, she kept a list by her nightstand, guests her father would tolerate, the soft foods he preferred now, and even the jazz playlist he once loved. Exhaustion clung to her like stale perfume. After long shifts at the hospital, she'd return to administer her father's medication, sort through his bills, and massage his stiff hands until he drifted off. No one else in the family had offered to split the load. They called it too emotional or not their strength. And yet Emily pushed through it. Not because she had to, but because she couldn't bear the thought of her father feeling neglected in his most vulnerable stretch of life. The man who once coached her through her asthma attacks and built her first treehouse deserved a caregiver, not a committee of critics. She didn't mind the hard work. That wasn't what stung. What pierced was the invisibility. When her mother dropped off a cake last weekend, she barely stayed 5 minutes. No, thank you. No questions about how Emily was holding up. Just an offhand comment about Carla's latest brunch event, complete with pictures of clinking mimosas. Emily didn't envy their freedom, but she did crave acknowledgement, a simple nod that her sacrifices mattered. As she folded a basket of towels by the window, she caught sight of her father gently dozing in the sunlit armchair. His breathing had grown more peaceful since she started introducing classical music during his afternoon rest. Small changes, quiet victories that no one else noticed. Emily smiled gently, taking in the moment. She may have been burdened, but hope lived quietly within her. As long as her father still smiled when she walked into the room, there was something in this fractured family worth holding on to. Message came mid-shift, buried beneath a stream of group texts. Emily pulled out her phone during her short break, expecting a mundane update, something about catering or decorations. Instead, her eyes locked on the cold finality of the words. We've all agreed you shouldn't come to Dad's party. There's too much tension, and this day should be about peace. Peace? Emily's breath hitched. Her lunch sat forgotten on the counter as her world narrowed to just that sentence. She read it again. And again. It didn't make sense. Or maybe, deep down, it did. This was just confirmation of what Emily had always feared, seen not for her love or care, but as a source of disruption. The selfless daughter who had picked up the pieces after their father's stroke was suddenly considered the liability. She tried calling her mom. No answer. Carla, always dramatic and conveniently unavailable, left her on read. Mark replied 3 hours later with a vague, "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Harder? Emily sat on the bench outside the hospital, the evening chill brushing against her scrubs. The idea that her own family had voted her out like a character from a show they'd outgrown broke something in her. She wasn't angry, not yet, just hollowed out. That weekend, instead of dressing up for her father's 70th birthday, Emily grapples with a silence louder than any argument. She'd set reminders for this day, chosen the perfect photo of her and her dad for a speech she no longer had the right to give. Then came the real blow, a stream of Instagram stories and Facebook posts tagged with #DadTurns70. Carla shining in a floral dress. Her mom making a toast beneath white lanterns. The slideshow flickering in the background. Emily's photo, not hers with Dad, but the one Carla had staged weeks ago. Emily kept scrolling, numb. And then there was her father, alone in his chair, clapping politely. No real spark in his eyes. Just tiredness. That loneliness mirrored hers. And in that mirrored moment, the ache turned to resolve. She may have been uninvited, but she would no longer go unseen. Emily knew her family was skilled at creating versions of reality that suited them. Over the years, small falsehoods had quietly hardened into family truths, stories repeated so often that no one grasped how far they'd drifted from honesty. Growing up, Emily had learned to nod along, let them have their narratives. But now, with her father's birthday party exclusion still echoing through her thoughts, she began seeing every lie for what it really was, a tool to keep her in the background. Years ago, when Emily offered to move in and help their father after his stroke, Linda had clutched her hand dramatically, wiping away rehearsed tears. "You've always been the responsible one, sweetheart. We're so lucky you're willing." But just weeks later, at a neighborhood gathering, Emily overheard her mother telling someone that Carla was the one holding the family together. It was a quiet switch, deliberate, casual. And it stayed that way. Whenever Emily questioned family decisions or raised concerns, Linda cast her as the difficult one. "Emily always finds something to stress about," she'd remark, sighing into her coffee. What she called stress was actually care. What they branded as overreacting was Emily noticing what others ignored. Her dedication was twisted into drama. Her sacrifices mislabeled as intrusions. Carla's stories changed with whoever was listening. To outsiders, she was the loving daughter who visited often. They never knew most visits lasted under 10 minutes, tailored more for Instagram updates than actual care. Even Mark Pa quoted Carla's lines, telling relatives Emily meant well, but just brought a heavy energy. Emily remembered every holiday she'd spent prepping, organizing, calming tensions, only to be told she was doing too much. Carla would show up late in glittery heels, bring store-bought pie, and get praised for making the time. Mark would lean back and joke that Emily probably liked playing martyr. For years, their favorites weren't based on truth, but on convenience. Carla was shiny and loud, easier to love from a distance. Mark was docile and agreeable. Emily? She was dependable but invisible, the scaffolding holding everything up, and somehow never part of the picture. Now, with fresh eyes and a steady heart, Emily saw the web. And for the first time, she wasn't stepping back. She was mapping every thread. The night of my father's 70th birthday, I sat alone on my small living room couch, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea I had no intention of finishing. The glow of my phone screen lit up the room with notifications, family selfies, catered hors d'oeuvres, a slideshow projected across the backyard fence. The images kept coming, balloons in gold and navy. A string quartet. Carla in a silk dress behind a microphone. "That's my spot," I whispered, breath-catching. I had spent the last 2 years managing Dad's medications, arguing with pharmacists, picking him up after late-night falls, sitting beside his hospital bed when his speech failed him. I knew how much he hated crowds. But there he was, sitting alone in a corner of his own party, barely clapping as Carla toasted to the legacy of our incredible father. No one looked his way. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, that someone would notice my absence and call, that maybe my mom would text, apologetic. But silence arrived with cruel precision. The absence of my presence wasn't awkward to them, it was intentional. To them, I was expendable. The lump in my throat swelled as I scrolled through group photos, noting how carefully the family had arranged themselves. Linda flanked by Carla and Mark, smiling just wide enough. My father's expression stood out. Distracted, tired, a little lost. I could almost hear his voice from a few weeks earlier when he told me, "I don't want a big thing. Just a quiet night, maybe you and me and a slice of that lemon pie you make." They'd turned his wishes into a show. I set my phone down, the silence roaring. And then, for the first time in a long while, I didn't cry. I stared at the wall in front of me, realizing something sharp and honest by allowing their opinions to shape my worth. I had been showing up for a family who had long stopped seeing me. But that night, they made one mistake. They erased me in public. And now, the truth had room to breathe. Let them pose for pictures. I had something stronger. Memory, evidence, and resolve. Emily sat in the quiet of her tiny apartment, the glow of the party footage still playing on her phone. Otter echoed from the screen, but it didn't reach her heart. There, among the photos and speeches, was a family that had chosen to forget who kept it all together. Emily wasn't angry, not yet. She was devastated, yes, but also clear for the first time in a long while. If they wanted her silent and small, they had underestimated her. Deep beneath the hurt, something new stirred, resolve. The next day, Emily pulled out an old showbox filled with receipts, text messages, voicemail backups, all the invisible fingerprints of someone who'd shown up every time. Late-night medication reminders, her personal check paying for the stair lift. Voice memos from her father, speaking softly but earnestly, "I don't know what I'd do without you, She began organizing them in a digital folder, methodical and detached, like clocking in for a nursing shift. Her next step was quiet but firm. A call to her father's estate planner turned into a meeting. She asked questions with clarity, not emotion. As she suspected, Carla had encouraged changes without full transparency. Emily didn't need a confrontation, she needed custody of truth, and she got it. Determined to gather more than paperwork, Emily reached out to her father's neurologist, Dr. Hamid. He agreed to reevaluate her father's cognitive state, especially in moments when pressure from family may have influenced decisions. Emily wasn't seeking revenge. She was reclaiming her seat at a table someone else tried to pull away. While Carla played hostess, Emily reached out to the extended family, cousins, aunties, a few old family friends. Small conversations, gentle reminders. "I just wanted to thank you for checking in," she'd say. And as stories circulated, so did the recognition Emily had long yearned for. Perhaps the most poignant shift came when she bought a small camera and started filming her father during quiet visits. She didn't press him, just listened. "You kept this home breathing," he told her one afternoon. "I want you to have it one day." Emily smiled, not for victory, but healing. She wasn't broken anymore. She was rebuilding, silently, definitely, bold. Emily sat in the silence of her small kitchen, eyes fixed on the glow of her laptop screen. Outside, the wind rustled the early autumn leaves, but her world felt still, frozen in the quiet ache of betrayal. The images from the party replayed in her mind like a looped insult. Carla flaunting her speech, Mark clapping along vacantly, Linda smiling as if nothing had been broken. And her father, distant, faded into the background. She pulled up her email inbox and began to dig. For years, she had managed the bills, the medications, the late-night ambulance rides. Quietly, thanklessly. There were receipts, appointment summaries, digital messages from pharmacists and home health aides. With each file she placed into a newly labeled drive, Dad's care, she felt sharper, more grounded in her purpose. Next came the voice messages. She had saved them without thinking, short notes her father sent after she fixed something around the house or helped him through a tough night. "Thank you, sweetheart," one recording whispered. "I don't say it enough, but I couldn't manage without you." The warmth surprised her, and in it lived the truth she had nearly forgotten. Through the calm but determined guidance of her friend Karen, an elder care attorney, she requested a case review. Her father had signed over financial access to Carla, under stress and without medical reassessment following his stroke. Emily knew how to be subtle and steady. She contacted her father's neurologist, explained her concerns, and gathered his updated cognitive evaluations. When the doctor agreed that the circumstances warranted reevaluation, Emily felt her first crack of daylight. She started bringing a camera during her visits, not as a spy, but as a memory keeper. They talked, laughed. Sometimes her father wandered in thought, but then he'd look her in the eye and speak with surprising clarity. "You always put family first," he once said, even when family didn't do the same. That recording became her quiet centerpiece. Bit by bit, she reconnected with cousins who hadn't heard from the family in years. When they saw what she was doing, what she had always done, they offered scanned photos, support, and stories of their own frustration with Carla's control. By the end of the month, Emily had assembled not just evidence, but a truth no one could ignore. She hadn't been absent. She had been essential. Emily knew that confronting Carla head-on would be futile. Her sister thrived on drama and twisted facts until truth was unrecognizable. So Emily chose a different path. Truth wrapped in calm, undeniable evidence. She started by sorting through years of receipts, emails, and messages that documented her unwavering care for their father. Payments from her personal account for medications. Screenshots of late-night messages from Linda asking her to check on Dad. "I just can't handle him tonight." Voice messages from her father, trembling yet sincere, thanking her for always being there while no one else showed up. Then came the bank records. A quiet, firm call to her dad's financial institution revealed an unsettling truth. Carla had convinced him, under the pretense of ensuring future security, to make significant withdrawals. Some went toward party expenses, others to suspicious personal accounts. Emily noted every date, every sum. Emily reached out to her father's attorney with what she had gathered. Curious and concerned, the attorney dug deeper and confirmed that a recent amendment in the will had been drafted in haste during a period when their father had been on new medication under incredible stress. There were no recorded assessments of mental clarity at that time. That was enough to raise legal questions. To document her father's intentions clearly, Emily began visiting him more often, with his consent, bringing a small camera. Her dad, increasingly aware of the emotional fog surrounding him, began to open up. On a sunlit afternoon, he held her hand and quietly spoke. "You've been my anchor, I don't want the people who left me out to inherit what they didn't care for. You've cared." Emily's next move was quiet but telling. She invited two of their cousins, once close, recently distant, to dinner. Over simple plates of pasta, she shared some of the voice recordings and financial evidence. Their reactions were immediate. They had seen Carla's glossy exterior but never questioned it. Now they did. Word spread quietly and swiftly. Carla's supposed charm began cracking. Emily didn't need to raise her voice. The truth spoke enough. And it was that mounting, undeniable truth that would soon change everything. Living room, once filled with carefree memories of childhood, now hummed with tension. Emily sat with her back straight, her fingers lightly interlaced in her lap. Across from her, Carla lounged in a designer shawl, feigning disinterest but unable to hide the glint of expectation in her eyes. Linda perched nearby, arms folded tightly across her chest, trying to maintain her practiced calm. Mark hovered at the edge, silent, guilt flickering behind his eyes. The family lawyer, Mr. Hastings, an older gentleman with spectacles perched low on his nose, cleared his throat and gently opened the manila envelope before him. "Thank you all for coming. We're here today to review the final and amended wishes of Mr. Gerald Carter." Carla leaned forward slightly. Emily noticed how confident her sister looked, as if she'd already spent every penny she assumed was hers. But Hastings continued. "Before we begin, Mr. Carter asked that a short video message be played." The lights dimmed ever so slightly as the screen flickered to life. Emily held her breath. There, on the screen, sat their father. His eyes, though tired, sparkled with clarity. His voice, surprisingly strong, began, "I want my family to hear this from me directly." Carla's brow furrowed. Emily caught Linda shifting uncomfortably. "In my final months, only one person truly stood beside me without asking for anything. Emily, thank you for keeping me going when I was ready to give up. Thank you for making our old home feel like home again." His voice trembled. "I may not have said it enough, but I see you. You've given up so much to be there for me. So I've decided to leave the house in your name, along with decision-making authority for anything that concerns my care." Gasps filled the room. Carla's mouth fell open, the screen faded, and Mr. Hastings placed additional documents on the table. "As Mr. Carter's attorney, I confirm these amendments are notarized and filed. The court has reviewed evidence of undue influence and found cause to safeguard his original intentions." Silence enveloped the space, punctuated only by the sound of Carla's shallow breathing. Emily didn't gloat. She rose quietly, nodded politely, and walked to the window, finally free, finally heard. The will hadn't just restructured an inheritance. It had realigned a lifetime of imbalance. Carla sat tall in her chair, perfectly curated in appearance, a designer scarf draped over her shoulder, a gleam in her eye that screamed certainty. The Carter family gathered in the living room, a space once filled with laughter and warm Sunday traditions, now hushed under tension thick enough to slice. At the center stood the family lawyer, Mr. Holloway, his aging hands trembling slightly as he opened the folder. Carla's eyes sparkled, as if she already saw her name etched in bold across the estate's most valuable assets. Emily entered quietly, not dramatically, but with a calm assurance that unsettled Carla more than she could admit. She didn't dress for war. She didn't need to. She was war, dignified, prepared, and quietly unshakable. Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. We'll begin with Mr. Carter's revised directives. Carla blinked. Revised? He slid a USB drive into the flat-screen monitor, and the room went dim as footage played. Emily and her father sat on the porch, sunlight filtering through the sycamores behind them. Her father's voice was delicate but deliberate. I want Emily to have the house. She's kept this home a home. When I got lost, she found me again. This is my choice, made with a clear mind. Gasps echoed. Linda's face grew pale. Mark looked down, suddenly fascinated with the rug. Carla's voice cracked. He didn't know what he was saying. That's not. Mr. Holloway raised a hand gently. This video was reviewed by a neurologist who confirmed Mr. Carter's cognitive clarity at the time. Paired with a notarized statement and my legal presence, it's fully binding. Then came the letter, read aloud. Mr. Carter's words of remorse for having failed to speak up when Emily kept giving. And giving. Without acknowledgement. His words dismantled the tropes Carla had spun for years. No longer the overlooked daughter, Emily stood still as the scales tipped. The final blow came not from Emily, but from truth itself. Carla's manipulation, traced through voice messages and unreleased bank withdrawals, came to light. And as Holloway handed Carla a pending legal notice, her flawless facade cracked. Emily didn't gloat. She simply turned to her father's chair, now empty, and smiled because, finally, she felt seen. Truth had spoken, and the false queen's reign was over. Sun filtered through the lace curtains as Emily walked through the front door with the key she hadn't used in weeks. The heavy scent of wood polish and lemon balm greeted her, just as it had when she was a child tiptoeing in for cookies after school. But today, it wasn't her mother's home anymore. It was hers. Lawfully, fully, peacefully hers. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself in the echo of silence that followed the months of manipulation and noise. The floors still creaked in the hallway. Her father's favorite armchair sat by the window where he liked to read, a worn corner of a crossword puzzle still nestled between cushions. Despite everything, the house had waited, undisturbed, for her return. And somehow she could feel it recognized her. Not just as a caregiver or the dutiful daughter, but now as its keeper. Emily placed her purse on the counter, then slowly walked into the living room. It didn't feel grand. It felt right. There was no victory dance, no defiant smile. Just quiet gratitude. She wandered down the hall and opened the door to her old bedroom. The faded paint was still the same pale blue, and her forgotten trinkets filled the shelves, photographs, books, a childhood drawing taped inside the closet. She rubbed her hand along the edge of the windowsill, where she used to press her forehead while daydreaming about escaping. Funny how life had led her back as if the house itself knew she needed shelter. That night, she made a simple dinner, roast chicken, her father's favorite, and ate in silence beneath the dim light of the dining room chandelier. Later, she took a small cake from the fridge. Homemade, imperfect, slightly lopsided, just the way her father liked it. As she lit a candle, she smiled softly. She sat across from the empty chair and whispered, "Happy birthday, Dad." Then she pressed play on her recorder, and his voice filled the room once more, dry humor, contagious laughter, a softness rarely seen by others. Emily closed her eyes. The house didn't just belong to her. It had been waiting for her all along. Emily sat alone on her small living room couch, legs folded beneath her, a forgotten mug of tea cooling on the table nearby. She hadn't meant to open social media, not really, but curiosity always found ways to slip through quiet, tired reasoning. And there it was. Post after post. Photos and videos tagged from a backyard glimmering with string lights, music drifting through the air, and tables lined with catered dishes. The caption under Carla's post read, "Dad's 70th, family first." Emily's eyes lingered on the photo of her father. His pale, thinning face caught mid-laugh, though his eyes looked elsewhere. Lost. Detached. He never liked crowds, never once. He used to smile through family events for Linda's sake, then quietly thank Emily later for making him comfortable again with soup and silence. Now they had him there, with strangers hugging him, a clink of champagne glasses in the background, and Carla giving a toast. Emily recognized the words. "The strongest man I know, who taught us to love with patience. Those were lines from the letter Emily once wrote him during his recovery, hanging on his fridge for almost a year. The pain wasn't in being excluded, it was in being erased. She leaned back, the silence around her louder than any party noise. All she had done, staying up during long shifts to coax him through exercises, spending her own savings when insurance fell short, reading to him when his speech faltered, had been rewritten into someone else's narrative. She felt small, at first. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. She went to her bookshelf and pulled open an old box. Receipts for medical supplies, thank you notes from his physical therapist, even a journal entry from the night he was first discharged. She flipped to a page, her handwriting clear. He smiled for the first time in 2 weeks today. I made chicken soup. He said it reminded him of Mom's before she got too tired to cook. This messy, quiet, loyal effort was the real celebration. Not the decorations or the speeches. Her father had never needed a crowd. He needed care. So on his actual birthday, 5 days after the party, Emily baked a simple cake. Chocolate, with a photo of them taped beside the candles. She took it to his room in the care facility. "Happy birthday, Dad," she whispered. He smiled, weak but real. And that night, it was just them. No pretense, just love.